first video was an hour and 11 minutes, and I realized as I was uploading it that there were a couple of topics that I felt were important that I completely forgot to talk about, even though they were on my list. But I stopped looking at my list at some point and forgot about them. So I mentioned in a pinned comment on that video that I would probably make a part 2, but I'm really going to try to make this like maximum 20 minutes. I'm not going to talk another hour about this topic because quite frankly, I could make a whole documentary about this topic at this point. So let's just dive right in. The main topic that I forgot to talk about was Danielle. Danielle was the winner of cycle 6. And 6. And one of my favorite winners. They also interviewed Joni, who was the runner-up, who incidentally at that moment was my favorite, still kind of is. I really wanted her to win it, but I also wanted Danielle to win it. It was one of those cycles where I really didn't care which one of them won it. But Joni to this day will probably always stay my favorite runner-up. She was just a good person, but also great at taking photos. But there's a couple of things. Joni was, I think, fairly positive in the documentary and fairly neutral, but Danielle was really negative, and that surprised me. The reason it surprised me is because she came on the show, I think, cycle 7 or 8, and gave an a talk with Tyra to the girls who were on that cycle about her experience, and that she was told by her management agency or her modeling agency to lose weight, and she already was really thin, and she changed her name to Danny because it was more commercial. And she remembered calling Tyra and asking for advice, and Tyra kind of, at least from what it looked like in that conversation, gave her advice. And that, she was like, you are already a pretty thin model. I wouldn't, if they want you to lose a few pounds to get a job, I wouldn't say no to it, but do it in a healthy way and don't go too far. Like, stay within your limits. You have to kind of maybe talk to like a therapist about this, or no, talk to a dietitian about this and go about it in a healthy way, and just kind of tips and tricks. But she didn't have a positive experience at all. So she was the one that I initially was talking about, that when she, in her first year, when she got signed to the modeling agency, as part of her prize package, she didn't get sent on go-sees with all the other models that were part of that agency. And one of the models asked the director, I guess, of that agency, why isn't Danielle coming with us and on the go-sees? And their response was, because she is considered a reality star because of America's Next Top Model, and a lot of clients don't want to book her because they don't want the focus to be taken away from their fashion show and put all on Danielle, who's like this reality star. And that's what Danielle said. She said, even when I did go on go-sees, that was kind of the response I got. You're unbookable because you were an America's Next Top Model, and you're now considered a reality TV show star. So, said that about 5 years ago, and cycle 10 was 2008. So, let's go 4 cycles, but that would have been 2 years. So cycle 6 would have been around 2006. 5 years ago, when this was recorded, which was 2005, would have been 2020. So that's 14 years later. Tyra called her and said, I knew there were doors you wouldn't even be able to get over the ledge of because you were on Top Model, and I did nothing about it. And Danielle essentially said, F off. You have no idea how hard my career has been. You have no idea how hard I've had to fight to get anywhere. And for you to come to me 14 years later and apologize for this, I don't need it. And she said, Danielle said, I've been in the industry for 20 years now. I've had my ass handed to me multiple times because of Top Model, and I've had to fight really hard to become successful. Now, I can't really say whether she was successful. I think she kind of, at least for a while, made a living out of a modeling career. But can we also just talk about how absolutely stunningly beautiful she is? Like, this is 20 years later, and she looks like she hasn't aged a day, and she's gorgeous. So, I know modeling has an age on it, but for crying out loud, she might be in her early 40s now, but book that girl, she's gorgeous. But that was one part of it that I never knew, that she, and I'm assuming most Top Model girls, especially the winners who were signed to a contract with an agency, and especially in the first year couldn't just freelance, do whatever they wanted, would have had that same issue, the stigma of winning America's Next Top Model. Actually, there were other models in the episode that said, who didn't win, that said I went to various modeling agencies with a full portfolio of gorgeous pictures, and they looked at them and went, is this an America's Next Top Model portfolio? And when the model said yes, they just slid it back across the table and went, thanks, but that's not what we're looking for. So this just brings, and this was very early on in the show, so this just brings home the point that Top Model was a reality TV show purely for entertainment purposes. It was not, I don't think, ever really meant to launch a model's career. That said, there are quite a few models that created a very successful career off the back of Top Model, and I'm going to try to end the video on that to make it a little bit more of a positive note. But I think the biggest controversy with Danielle was our gap. Now, this pissed me off even back then. It actually pissed me off more so when Chelsea had it done. Damn it, and I looked this up and I forgot when that was. Chelsea was season 15, which was 2010. So if cycle 6, let me quickly look up when that aired just to have it absolutely right. It actually aired in 2006. So that's 4 years later. When in cycle 15 Chelsea had a gap, they asked her to widen her gap because it was way more high fashion, and that was only 4 years after they forced Danielle to close her gap because she was never gonna book a job with it. And Tyra said, that's what I was told. I was told by people in the fashion industry that they would never book her because she had a gap in her teeth. And then 4 years later, it's like, widen your gap, it's high fashion. I was just like, come on. Like, I understand that the fashion industry changes every year. What's in fashion this year is going to be completely out of fashion next year, and it's going to be something totally different. I get that. But I don't think that justifies making decisions like this. And the Joni part, I am not upset about, and quite frankly, I don't think Joni is either. Joni spent 2 days really, but a whole night at the dentist, and then had to go back the next day. She got a completely new set of teeth, really. At least she got veneers, because they pulled out the 4 teeth that were sticking out, and then they grinded down all her teeth to really small pieces, which I believe is what they do when they then put veneers on. But she was actually really grateful that America's Next Top Model was doing that for her, because her family could never afford braces. She couldn't afford to have her teeth fixed, and she didn't think she was ever going to be able to. So and she'd always been really self-conscious about her teeth and her smile, and, you know, hiding her smile all the time. So she felt like she won the lottery, that they were doing that for free for her. Now, she did say that she has a lot of orthodontist problems that weren't fixed and will never be able to be fixed, because now she has veneers. But I do want to point out, because people online are spinning the narrative that what they did on Top Model was a quick fix and caused orthodontist problems. That's not true. She had those before. She just never had the money to fix them, and they weren't able to be fixed after the veneers were put in. So that's not, let's get the story straight. So for Joni, I'm not outraged, because she was actually at the time, and I think still to this day, very grateful with what they did for her. But Danielle didn't want to close her gap, and was essentially told, if you don't do it, we'll eliminate you the next episode. And I want to just clarify that makeovers, like, that is not part, for me, of a makeover. A makeover is a new hairdo and a new wardrobe. On America's Next Top Model, typically just a new hairdo. But if you look at Queer Eye, Jonathan does a new hairdo and Tan does a new wardrobe, and that's part of the makeover. A makeover should be reversible. You should be able to go back to who you were before if that's what you want. You should be able to grow out your hair. You should be able to buy other clothes. If you just, everyone's taste changes. I don't wear the same kind of clothes I did 10 years ago. Makeovers should be changeable. And closing, like working on someone's teeth, typically is not reversible, and that's like a permanent change, and that's not, in my opinion, okay to just change someone's look permanently. And that is an issue I had at the time already. So I felt really sorry for Danielle. I also think they gave a really shady edit at the end, when they showed Tyra saying, if someone calls you out on your bullshit, I hope you take responsibility for it and evolve like we all do. And then they cut to Danielle saying, girl, bye. Let's just, or something like girl, bye, or girl, bullshit. I think this is a perfect place to end it. And then you saw all the models that gave interviews get up from their chairs and leave. I don't know if she was reacting to that answer, or if they just edited it in such a way that it looked like that. But that was a really shady edit. wanted to mention that I forgot is there is actually one photo shoot that I did think was all kinds of wrong at the time it happened, and that was in cycle 4 when they shot at a cemetery and the models had to portray one of the 7 deadly sins, and they had to lie in an empty grave. Now, part of it was that Kaylin had just found out that I think the day of or the day before, that one of her best friends back home had died. So when they arrived at the cemetery, she was like, "You've got to be kidding me," and she lost it. And she broke down multiple times during hair and makeup. She walked off at some point to just have like some alone time. And Mr. J asked the other models what was going on, and when they told him, he was like, "Oh my god, I can't believe that happened." Now, he did say to her, "I remember that she didn't have to do it if she didn't want to. She was a trooper. She wanted to get the shot. She did it." I do believe that was a coincidence, because these photo shoots are planned out before the cycle even starts shooting. You need permission for things like this. Like, you either need permission from the city, or if the cemetery is attached to a church, from the church, from the pastor, to be allowed to shoot there. You need, like if you shoot on a street or in a building or on a building rooftop, you need permission for that. You need permits for that. You need to be, you need to section off parts of a street or of a building. So I do think all the photo shoots are planned out before the cycle starts. But the Dion thing, I do believe they already had that photo shoot planned, but when they heard her backstory, I think they purposefully assigned her the shooting victim. That was not the same thing with Kaylin. They all had to lie in an empty grave. But I already remember thinking back then that was just wrong. It's in really poor, there's something sacrilegious about it. It's in really poor taste to put models in an empty grave and shoot their photos. So that for me was not one of those. It was a different time. That for me is one of those, you should never do that. That's not an artistic call. That's morbid and wrong. So wanted to say that. Now I'm going to move on to a couple of other things, but I really don't want to make this video too long. So let's just hover over them. I watched an interview with Eva Marcel, who won cycle 3. She was horrified to find out some of the things that happened on Top Model, but she didn't experience any of them. She actually loves Tyra. She's very grateful to Tyra for helping her as a black woman and a petite woman to break into the industry, because that was both not really done at the time, and she was successful in that. And that was because of Top Model. She also became a very successful actress. She apparently was on another reality show, the Real Housewives of something. And she was asked, do you think the Shandy story, because she was appalled by that one, do you think that was all production's fault? And she said, 100%. She said, nothing happens on a reality show without production being involved. She said, when I was on the Real Housewives, I didn't know any of the other contestants' storylines unless production told me, and I really only knew as much as what production was willing to share with me. I do think that's different on Top Model, because those models are pretty much always together. They live under the same roof. They get ready together in hair and makeup. They watch often each other's photo shoots. I don't think there's a lot of time for something to happen to one of them where the rest doesn't know about it. she didn't experience body shaming or girls being put down on her cycle, and like with anyone, because she would have been there for everyone. Yaya, however, who was the runner-up that season cycle, Yaya DaCosta, she never had anything positive to say. She hated Tyra and let that be known in many interviews. I don't know if she ever specifically mentioned why, but I watched an interview, well, not a really interview, I think she did a piece, she just talked about it on Instagram, and said that a few years ago she ran into Tyra. Coincidentally, they both happened to be in the same place at the same time, and she decided to let go of all her anger and just forgive her. And Yaya in the meantime also must be in her early 40s. She's learned a lot of life lessons. She said, forgiveness is not for the other person, it's for you. It's for you to let go of anger. It's for you to feel lighter. And she said, I had a really good conversation with Tyra. We talked out a lot of things that I had problems with. I knew already back then she was getting a lot of hate for Top Model, because this was early COVID days when people were starting to binge watch it. And she said when we left, I gave her a big hug, and when it was time to let go, I hugged her even harder to let her know that she was loved. With all the hate she was getting, she also still had love, and she said, I do have love for Tyra, and I've completely forgiven her for all the stress and pressure she put us under. So I think that was Yaya's problem with Cycle 2. I think she felt it was just way too stressful. But I don't... 3, sorry, I keep saying Cycle 2, Cycle 3. But Eva's experience was different. So it's weird. Eva didn't seem to pick up on anything negative for any of the girls throughout her season. I'm just gonna keep calling it seasons instead of cycles. And Yaya did, but Yaya more so for herself. So I don't necessarily know what the truth is there, but both of them anyway love Tyra. Yaya has forgiven Tyra for everything that happened, which seemed to be mostly just too much pressure on the girls. And Eva is grateful to Tyra for kickstarting her career, which never would have happened without Top Model. So just want to say Tyra is being depicted as the villain in all of this, and I don't want that to always be the case. Again, I said in my first video, I thought a lot of the photo shoots were not controversial. I still don't think they would be today. They were creative. They were beautiful at times. Oh, like a lot of times they were beautiful. But she's the one. But what I had an issue with is that Tyra, for the ones that weren't, and just for the things that happened to some of the girls, didn't take accountability, and that's what bothered me, that Tyra didn't show up. She didn't show up to take accountability. I also quickly wanted to touch upon a subject. I said last time that they were starting to delve into some drama and then stopped. And I would talk about that at the end of the video, and I didn't. What I was specifically talking about is that Mr. J mentioned that at some point production came to him and said, could you please coach this model to take better pictures, because her storyline wants us to keep her in for a few more episodes, but we can't justify that if her pictures keep being the as bad. Simultaneously, he said there were multiple episodes across all the seasons, well, mostly later seasons, where they didn't pick a model's best photo because they wanted to send her home and they needed a reason to. Her story wasn't entertaining enough or interesting enough to keep watching. And I really wanted him to dive more into that and give examples of people and what specifically he was told to do. And they didn't go that far because, again, Netflix documentaries are neutral. So, but that's not, again, RuPaul's Drag Race does the same thing. I don't like getting into that. I watch RuPaul's Drag Race purely for entertainment, whether it's rigged for a specific winner, don't really care. It doesn't affect my life in any way. I watch it for entertainment, and that's the same with America's Next Top Model. And let's keep in mind, it was the first reality TV show of its kind. I believe both Project Runway and RuPaul's Drag Race came later. So, a lot of it was trying to figure out what they were going to do with it and how they were going to keep it entertaining, and they made a lot of mistakes along the way. I think once RuPaul's Drag Race ends, there will be a lot of queens, when their NDA is no longer valid, who will probably say the same thing. Hell, The Biggest Loser already had documentaries about it and it was all negative. But there are contestants who've also kept their weight off for over a decade and have spoken out and said, the show doesn't set you up for failure. You need to keep working on it. So, two sides to everything. And I mentioned this before, I'll say it again. Jay Manuel is not as innocent as he makes himself out to be. He blames everything on Tyra told me to do this, but he said a lot of nasty things to the girls on set that were not scripted, that were not clearly told to him by anyone to say. He just said it. And I always thought Nigel was a pretty mean guy. I think he's nice now. He's actually stayed really good friends with a lot of the models. He's done a lot of photo shoots with them after the show, just for his personal work. And he is still really good friends with some of the models. A lot of the models, actually. So, he does appear to be a genuinely nice guy, but I don't think he was during judging. He also said some really harsh things. So they're all kind of guilty of it, but they all took accountability for it for the most part. But Jay definitely didn't for a lot of the things, or didn't even mention a lot of the things he did or said, and kind of just passed everything negative off on Tyra, which I don't think is fair either. Now, let me end this video on a positive note by giving you all the most successful top model contestants. I think most of them weren't winners because they weren't in a contract and they were able to do things on their own, and that worked really well for them. I also want to just mention that there are some contestants who died and some who went completely off the rails, like Renee from Cycle 8, which really surprised me. If you want, just go look those up. I don't want to talk about the stuff like that in this video. Let's not go to the dark place. There is another documentary coming out on March 11th on E. I don't know if I'll be able to watch it because E is not a channel we get in Europe. I'm sure it'll appear online soon enough, so I might just be a few days late, but I do think that, from what I understand, that documentary is completely one-sided and very negative. So while I will watch it, I watch it with a wall up. I'm not going to take everything they say as truth, and I'm not going to make a video about it because I think a lot of it will be taken out of context, to be honest. Then Eva Marcille became a real housewife. She had a pretty successful career on TV with roles in Smallville, The Young and the Restless, and House of Pain. And then between 2013 and 2015, she appeared in The Real Husbands of Hollywood. And then in 2018, she appeared in The Real Housewives of Atlanta. I do not understand The Real Housewives. I know it's an American reality show. There's so many of them. I don't know what it's about. Is it literally just following wives of successful men who are never home? And it just follows the wives. And then obviously drama between them. Because having recently started watching Project Runway, they did an episode where they had to dress some of the Real Housewives of different series, and I felt like the ones from the same series were kind of protective of each other, even though on the series they're supposed to hate each other. I don't know, similar to any reality show drama on TV, but usually a lot of love off TV. Like, again, RuPaul's Drag Race as an example. A lot of times the queens on TV seem to hate each other and fight all the time, but after the show is while the show is airing, they've already long gotten past that and became best friends. So, I don't really know what The Real Housewives is about, but she has been on quite a few of them. And then Leela Goldcool, who I do follow on Instagram, she might be the most successful, to be honest. She appeared on Cycle 19th. She came in third, so if you remember, if you ever watched that season, she went home really early. To everyone's surprise, I know fans were really shocked. Then she had a chance to come back. There was one of those episodes where one of the eliminated girls could come back if they won the photo challenge, I guess. I'm not sure. And Leela did. She came back. She made it to final 3, but because she slipped and fell during the final runway show, she ended up third. I do believe she could have won otherwise, but that girl has done everything high fashion. She also appeared in Vogue, but I just remember her constantly, she walks Fashion Week all the time. She walks for Chanel, Nina Ricci, Tom Ford. She recently posted something about Karl Lagerfeld getting ready for one of his shows, like his brand. She gets booked still regularly for really high fashion designers. So she's just the success story and didn't win. And then there's Annalie Tipton, who also is a popular actress. I think I saw her for the first time in Crazy Stupid Love, is that what it's called? It featured Josh Groban. That's why I wanted to watch it, because I'm a Josh Groban fan. And then noticed she was in it. I was like, oh hey, that's the America's Next Top Model girl. She was also on an episode of The Big Bang Theory. I think twice. I think it was part of a challenge win where Raj and Howard show up at the top model house that they located via satellite through Caltech, and she and Sam from that season opened the door. But she also was on The Big Bang Theory as a separate character, trying to find a girlfriend for Sheldon. And then the rest, I mean, actually really, really popular is Winnie Harlow. That was not her name on Top Model, by the way. Does it say what her name was on Top Model? It doesn't. But I think you all know who I'm talking about if you watched the later season. She's the model that had vitiligo with sort of the big white area around her mouth. She wasn't, to my recollection, a very nice person on the show. She also got eliminated about halfway through. But she is now a very popular model again, super high fashion. Her vitiligo really worked in her favor because she looked so unique that a lot of designers wanted to use her, and she's been a guest judge on Drag Race. I think more than once. She does actually seem to be a nice person. I think, first of all, let's remember a lot of these girls were a lot younger during Top Model. And also, I don't think a competition setting brings out the best in anyone. It doesn't in me. None of my friends want to go bowling with me because I turn into a monster, since I play to win. I don't play for fun. I think anyone who plays games for fun is a psychopath. Games are meant to be won. Why would you play if you don't want to win? What's the point in playing a game other than winning? So, my 2 cents on that. But, yeah, Winnie Harlow, I think also one of the biggest success stories. So I just wanted to mention some of those to show that Top Model was not all bad. Actually, I think most of Top Model was not bad. I loved the photo shoots. I loved the runway shows. I think a lot of the contestants that came out of it, more so not winners than winners, became very successful. But the way they treated some of the girls was appalling, and some of the things that happened that they pretended didn't or pretended weren't as bad. That is what bothers me, and again, the lack of accountability. So, let me leave it here, because it's again a much longer video than I planned. Those were just the last bits I wanted to mention. If you are interested in the other documentary, March 11th on E, and I'm very curious to see what that is all about. I still have to watch The Biggest Loser documentary, even though it is on Netflix, so it should be more neutral, but I also don't want to because I love that show, and I also don't want it to be all negative. And I know it isn't. There have been contestants who've spoken out about it and said that is not the truth for everyone. But I probably will watch it at some point because I know Netflix typically keeps it a story from both sides. E is called E Entertainment for a reason. I think they're going to tell it from one side, so, you know. Anywho, thanks for watching. Thanks for all your lovely comments. It seemed that a lot of you really liked the first video.